So the Portland Trailblazers in the midst of the longest win streak that they've had in, 4 years, you said, Danny Meringue? 4
Indeed.
seasons? Yeah. They rattled off 4 straight to start the 2022-2023 season. So you have to go back even one more to find a 5-game win streak. They've been playing really good basketball. In the last 10 games, 9 of their last 10, they have won. They are number 1 in net rating, number 1 in team defense, number 6 in team offense over that 10-game stretch. No ands, ifs, or buts about it. They're playing good. You mentioned, though, the fact that young legs in February and young teams like this, there is usually a surge because they're still playing hard, and they don't essentially know the lay of the land, right? This is like the dog days of summer in baseball, where it gets really hard. There's a lot of the veteran teams are sitting there going, you know what? We get about a week off here coming up in middle of February, and it's hard to get through this stretch of the year, and usually young teams will surge. There is another aspect, though, that I think we're overlooking. We mentioned this yesterday with DeAndre Ayton. His post-game press conference or post-game interview that he had with Brooke Olsendam after going for 25 and 20 against the Suns, he said, I tell you this all the time, I love it here. Mm-hmm. The trade deadline in a lot of veteran teams and veterans on young teams that are rebuilding like this, I think that when you mention Anthony Simons, the way he played, now internally they're not having these conversations with guys, but externally all the buzz is, everybody's available, all that stuff. For guys like Anthony Simons, DeAndre Ayton, Jeremy Grant, Robert Williams, the guys who have been, thrown out there, whether legitimate or not, into trade conversations, those guys staying engaged is also something that you got to give credit to Chauncey Billups and the rest of the staff and the organization, that they're keeping these guys engaged during this time that, dude, it's got to be a weird and stressful time for them.
Yeah, no, there's a report out there from Jason Quick talking about the different meetings that have taken place over the last couple of weeks behind the scenes that have kind of reinforced a lot of things and brought guys together. And one of the things I think you can see on the floor is the amount of communication that takes place now. I keep going back to that one time when Denny just lost his collective S on Scoot for not getting, he was visibly pissed. It was like, no boy, he's like, and it's not just that he was angry and who he was angry at. It was that he felt comfortable enough to be like, what the bleep are you doing?
Yeah.
And I think that's who Denny is at his core. But when you first get here and you don't know guys, you can't do that. I mean, you can, but that's how you get punched in the face. Just, it's kind of a thing that's, hell, Festus Ezeli tried to do the same thing here in Portland. It did not go well.
Yeah, they told him to
shut
where the F up and get out of the locker room.
Yeah, they told him where he could go. Now, Festus wasn't wrong. No. But, sometimes the messenger matters, right? So just kind of how that stuff unfolds. And you had some realizations from some young guys. I think there was a humbling of both Scoot and Shaedon, that occurred, and the understanding of what they need to do to get out on the court and to be productive. People can complain about Chauncey Billups, this, that, or the other. He does come, he is one of the maybe only people in the history of the NBA, when he says that I can speak to it, he can. He was the number 3 overall pick. He was a bust before he figured it out. He was a finals MVP and champion and all-star. He was a role player. He was traded out of nowhere. There's nothing in that dude's career outside of maybe a devastating injury that he can't go to one of those guys and go, I know the exact world that you're in.
Yeah.
I know what it's like to have a franchise give up on you. I know what it's like to have the franchise on your back. I know what it's like to get hit with a surprise trade. I know what it's like to question where you are and whether or not you can be an NBA. Anthony Simons has been on record talking about Chauncey Billups saving his actual career. So this is where, again, I don't think Chauncey's the best head coach I've ever seen in my life. But the thing that I have maintained throughout this entire process is that his relationship with those guys and his ability to keep the buy-in, regardless of what's happened, has been really impressive.
Meaningful.
You're finally starting to see it pay off. And that's the whole thing of like development and guys coming together. And a big part of this that we don't want to admit is like number one, health, and number two, luck.
Sure.
Like all those things just kind of have to coincide for this to kind of happen. And it looks, like some version of that 2006, 2007 Blazers team that rattled off 13 straight.
Yeah. And I mean, it gets to a point though where, we do know the limitations of this team. You don't want to ignore the limitations of this team and where the ceiling is. But when you talk about maximizing what you have, I think that you're seeing that over this 10-game stretch, at least with the Portland Trailblazers. And you mentioned, and we've talked about this on the show, right, before, the Shaedon Sharpe, come to Jesus meeting that he had with Chauncey Billups. That's not the only guy who's been having those meetings. You mentioned Anthony Simons being on the record like, Chauncey Billups saved my career. Mm-hmm. Like, these are the brutally honest conversations that are happening with Chauncey Billups and the players in that locker room. And Scoot Henderson was one of those guys as well. And Jason Quick of The Athletic has an article up right now. And I know that, this is something that you've been talking about, off the air for quite some time, Danny, is that there was a shift. I mean, for weeks you've been telling me about this off the air, that no, there was a meeting between Scoot and Chauncey, and it coincides with the change that we've seen. No,
it really does, and it wasn't one of those things where you just see this this slow build and like direction change. It was like, remember, like he was scoreless in a game. Was it Houston? I think it was Houston before he had that streak. So it wasn't like he was putting this stuff together, and you're like, oh, this is him finally culminating and like really putting a stretch of games together. It was. There were some clunkers. There were some real stinkers. There was a lot of turnovers. There was a lot of missed shots. There was a lot of bad decisions. The defense was bad. Just like, oh, man, this is rough. And then Chauncey has the come to Jesus meeting with him. And this is not to give Chauncey all the credit, because the credit goes to Scoot Henderson for pulling his head out and realizing and figuring out what's going on. And the gist of it that was told to me was that, Chauncey kind of read him the riot act of, you're not good enough right now, dude. You're not. And I don't know what you need. Like, he just threw the tape on and just let the tape talk for him. And when the tape's that bad, the tape's that bad. You know this from football, Dusty. The camera don't lie.
Nope, you can't run from that.
And that's the thing is like, and to Scoot's credit, he didn't. And everybody I talked to said, from that moment on, like, he just went out there and was just like, I'm going to just be me. And he stopped caring about turnovers. He stopped caring about missed shots. He stopped caring about and he just started playing. And it basically took a year and a half for that to come together. And it just needed that moment for Scoot to play free, to have like something got knocked loose to where all of a sudden he's seeing the floor differently. He's playing with not just speed, but with better pace. He's understanding. He's having a plan of attack. Like, how many times have you seen him in the past month look like he doesn't have a plan when he attacks? Maybe once a game?
Maybe, yeah. But like that was his biggest bugaboo, was like he would go into the lane, leave his feet, and you're like,
well, now what?
What are you gonna do, bud?
Yeah, and he'll do that once a night now, but
yeah,
that's normal. You know what I mean? Like that happens. Sometimes the defense makes a play. But
what?
Yeah, I know. Crazy to credit the other team. It's always your own guy's fault, either the positive or the negative.
My gosh.
But like what he's done, and he's not perfect, but far from that. But the thing that he's been able to do is like he's playing more progressive. It's not just this linear thing of like A to B or making a pass just to make a pass. He's making a pass that either is a going to a look or actually getting the offense initiated. Like, his rim pressure is resulting in actual production, and it's not just jumping up in the air and hoping. And there's so many more layers to his game now that you actually start, like, he puts together a night like he had last night. What did he finish with? Was it 17? Yeah, he finished with 17, 5 and 3 on 7 of 13. The weird thing was he got no free throws. And that stood out to me because he's been so good at getting to the free throw line lately. But like that, the thing about his game, his shooting, has been like the thing that's kind of unlocked him. And I've had a bunch of people ask me like, what do I think? When do I think defenses are going to adjust to him? I don't think they'll adjust to him until next year. And that's not a shot at Scoot Henderson. You just gotta he's got a year and a half of tape basically saying he can't and won't shoot.
Essentially this is his rookie year.
Yeah, they might in game start stepping up a little bit if he gets hot in a given game, but they're going to keep going under, or they're going to mix their coverages. They're not going to look at and treat him like Anthony Simons, where they go over every single thing, over lock and trail or top lock him and try to keep him from getting up above. Like, they're not going to do that. But that also allows the Blazers to capitalize. If Scoot Henderson does have players going under and he can hit some threes, that can be a thing that kind of gets him going. Like, if he steps into a comfortable three, I have no problem with him taking that shot. Like, there's nothing about his jumper where you're like, it's not Amen Thompson where you're like, ew, please, oh God, oh, where's that thing going kind of a deal. But and I think that's the big part of this right now is this development arc, because it's not just Scoot, it's Shaden, it's Tu, it's Denny, it's DA, like it's Ant. I mean, like, everyone has had some level of advancement over the past 2-3 weeks.
Yeah, and this is the kind of the situation that I've been grappling with is you get stretches of play from young guys, and then it's how long until you start to believe. Because if this stretch would have happened last year for Scoot Henderson, I think everybody would be like, yep, we're going to be believers.
Oh, 100%.
That may have been unfair to him developmentally because it still is a smaller sample size, right? At this point, though, when we've seen, it was 90-plus games of trending towards a bust, historically speaking, you have 90-plus games of that, how much longer until we say, okay, no, he actually has figured it out?
I think really I want to see basically, I think when we were talking about this, like 25, 30 games of the consistent, because here's what's going to happen is coming out of February into March, March basketball doesn't really matter. It's just particularly on lesser teams. It's just, that's where you where you get somebody who drops 40 on somebody in March and you're like, I don't know about that. Like, that's a little suspect, It's one of those situations. So for him, I really just think it's like, all right, let's see where he gets to. I had this up earlier. I want to try to run the little engine behind it. So according to Cleaning the Glass, Scoot Henderson's points per shot attempt last year was in the 9th percentile. Remember, low numbers are bad. 96.4. So less than a point per possession, okay? If I run it basically from January 1st of this year, if the website will actually work, it will go to maybe not work. Okay, it's going to not. There it goes. He's in the 91st percentile at 127.1.
Okay.
So you're talking about a seismic shift, a literal flip on its head from 9% to 91%.
Oof.
Yeah. So, and the big part of that is you look at his 3-point shooting. Scoot Henderson is in the 91st percentile since January 1st for effective field goal percentage. He's in the 94th percentile in 3-point percentage. He's in the 82nd percentile in corner 3-point percentage. And here's the thing. He's in the 47th percentile at rim finishing.
Wow.
So it's still not a good number, but that's actually a significantly better number that he has had. And he's in the 86th percentile in rim field goal attempts for guards. So, like, he gets there a lot. So that's where you're going to see a lot of the variance. But for Scoot, I mean, you're seeing this. With Shaden, I think even last night, the aggressiveness is the key to his game. Tu may have just fully ascended. Tu might just be that guy. And then I think Denny is right there. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens over this next handful of games before the All-Star break.
All right. Well, look, there's a very real possibility it could fall apart. It's not. They're playing really damn well right now, and that should be applauded. And look, if you're upset about the tank, this is reality. We've been telling you now for over a week. This team is not operating like a team that is tanking. So recalibrate. Give it a little bit of time. Let's see where we are at the All-Star break.